Hi, welcome to our show tonight. I'm joined by Pat Barrett, barrister at law, and Barry Murphy. I'm Alan Noonan, and we're here to talk about the special topic, which is Sean Quinn, disgraced Irish businessman, and there's a question mark after that. And I suppose I might as well ask the first question to you, Barry. Is he disgraced after everything that has happened?
I think in the eyes of the unintelligent, he's disgraced. The uneducated, he's disgraced, yes. But in his own eyes or in my eyes, I don't think he is, no.
What's your justification for saying that?
Look, this boils down, there's no way, well, okay, there are things that he's definitely done wrong, for sure. But at the end of the day, if you go out and you buy a motor car and there's 30,000 miles on the clock and a 2011 plate on it, and it turns out that the car is 4 years older than you thought, with 120,000 miles on it, then you have recourse to the law.
Okay.
Let
me put that point to Pat Barrett here. Wasn't he in fact misled about the art and in fact forced to buy shares to artificially inflate the price of Anglo-Irish?
Well, Sean Quinn is saying that of the €2.8 billion he borrowed, that he shouldn't have to pay back. I think it's €2.35 billion of that. He accepts, and has always accepted, that he owes €455 million of that loan. So we're not talking about small sums of money here. But in regards to what Barry said, that only the unintelligent and the uneducated think he's disgraced. Well, you know, if a High Court judge is unintelligent and uneducated,
you don't mean to presume that it's not possible that you couldn't get a High Court judge that's unintelligent?
Well, I certainly don't think Elizabeth Dunn is, no.
But let me put the point to you there, Barry.
No, but hold on.
He was quoted in a case there last year saying that Quinn made a very conscious decision is his own words, to put the assets beyond the reach of the Irish Bank Resolution Corporation. The IBRC now is the remnants of what is basically nationalised Anglo-Irish.
Yeah.
That effectively is our money that he owes us.
Okay, let's start with this story, right? Go back to this car thing, right? It's very simple. Ernst & Young, which is one of the big 4 or 5 accountancy firms in the country, if not the world, provided a set of accounts. Now, he bought shares in Anglo-Irish Bank at the time based on their accounts and presuming that the Irish regulator would be regulating the bank and Ernst & Young, and these are the bodies of the government and one of the 4 or 5 big accountancy firms. The bottom line here is, and it's very, very simple, these accounts were not, well, I can't say that, these accounts were not correct, but morally they were not correct. There was billions of euros shifted every year, a few days before the end of the year, to cook the books basically, and shifted back into the Anglo-Irish Bank to make it look a far wealthier bank than it actually was. So what we're talking about here is Ernst & Young, the Anglo-Irish Bank, all of this was false, the regulator were all false. Now, hold on, let's get back to the asset thing, right? The asset thing is a separate issue, but from day one, there's about 3 sins here. One is Sean Quinn's, 2 are Sean Quinn's, and 1 is the Anglo-Irish Bank, the regulator, and Ernst & Young.
Okay, but in effect, are you not saying, Barry, in fact, that the scope for actual culpability for what this is broader than Sean Quinn? Well, Sean Quinn is guilty of particular sins of omission. Let's put him like that at the moment until the trial is finished. But are you in effect saying that, in fact, responsibility for this should be expanded? And I'd offer anybody to join in the conversation at the moment over Twitter at FEC and also join us on Facebook if you want to comment, say anything about that. I might throw that back to Pat Barrett, the idea of the culpability for what has happened actually being broader than just Sean Quinn. That Sean Quinn has in effect become a scapegoat for all of our accusations of what's happened.
Well, if he is being singled out, the reason he's being singled out is because he's one of the largest creditors this country has ever known. And I'm just going by, you know, what Sean Quinn himself has said here, that he owes Anglo to the tune of €455 million. Now, further than that, let's not forget that he was put under court order, as you mentioned, Barry, to make sure these assets were not dissipated, assets of a number of his holding companies and subsidiaries.
Sure.
And his son and his nephew were basically caught on tape agreeing to dissipate his assets and saying that, in his nephew's case, saying that he would have no problem with lying to the court about that. Now, the 2 of them and Sean Quinn Sr., they've had their day in court. They had 15 days in court. And at the end of that, the High Court, Ms. Justice Dunn, was of the opinion, beyond a reasonable doubt, that they had consciously breached a court order, that their evidence in court had been untruthful and misleading, and so that they had committed contempt and were jailed for that. So I think that in any way to claim that this man, is being scapegoated or is a victim or doesn't deserve what he's got.
But Pat, one second, right? From a sin point of view, right? I'm accepting completely that. In my opinion, that they did shift assets to keep them away from the state, right? Now, let me try and simplify this down again, right? So you're there and you've worked hard to build a house, whatever. Somebody comes and they want to break into your house, whatever, right? The next thing, they're outside the house, they're gone with your television or whatever, they drop the wallet. What are you going to do? Like, I mean, the point I'm trying to make here is, as far as he was concerned, he built up a whole thing. The whole thing was false. The whole situation was false. The next thing, a government come in, take the control of his house, for the want of a better word, his whole business that he built up over 40 years, and all of a sudden he goes and he wants to defend himself, and he goes stripping assets left, right and centre because he's dealing with a completely insane institution called the Irish government, that in the first place put the regulator there, Ernst & Young and the Anglo-Irish Bank, and all of these people are walking free while that man is in prison. No, I completely accept he was wrong to strip the assets. If he did, I presume he did.
He even admits it as much himself.
He even admits it as much himself. I think he would completely admit that he was wrong to do that. What he's doing now,
hasn't yet.
Right? Well, that could change pretty quick. The other thing is that, as far as I'm concerned, now he's in a position whereby he's taken the Irish government and the IRBC or whatever he's taken to court, right? That's what he should have done first day. And I'm sure he was in the middle of a boxing ring and he didn't know what way to turn and everything was moving. And I'm sure he would be the first one to say that's what he should have done day one.
Barry, let me put this
I
one
can't speak
point
for Sean Quinn, and I'd love Sean or Peter Quinn to come in here and clarify a few things with us.
And let me put the one point to you that I think that might kind of encapsulate the anger that most of the Irish people feel towards this case. It's not even the fact that they see him as this arrogant businessman who was trying to sort of get out of his just comeuppance. I think what they see, in fact, is a gambler doesn't get to keep the pot when he's lost the game.
But
that in effect, this is a man.
Let's go back again. You're missing the point here, in my opinion. You're missing the point. The gambler goes into the casino, okay? He puts 100 euros down on black or whatever he does. If the wheel was rigged afterwards and found to be completely rigged, that you're missing the point. That's the crux of the whole thing. Had that not happened, right? Sean Quinn was a clever businessman. He's not a fool, like. He built up a fantastic glass business, cement business, insurance business, whatever, right? And he comes along and he takes Ernst & Young, the regulator, Anglo-Irish Banks, accounts,
Barry,
everything.
are you in fact saying, like, for example, let me kind of take you on that point, that you're kind of saying that he was forced into the casino, that he was forced to put his chips on the table?
No, there's nobody forced into a casino. That's a separate issue. You walk into the casino, you put down 1,000 euros, it doesn't matter, on black.
Yeah, but the problem, Barry, was that he put our money on the table. In fact, he gambled with loans that now are our responsibility. That's why people are going after him.
How do you mean? How did he put your money? Where did he borrow the money?
So we have 2.8 billion.
But wait a while now. Where did he borrow the money?
He borrowed the money from Anglo-Irish.
Right. And was that your money at that time?
No, not at all.
It was the Anglo-Irish Bank. So he borrowed no taxpayers' money.
Yes, but the criminal aspect of the whole trial, I presume, is actually where he tries to hide the wealth that he is, the assets that he has.
I completely accepted that 5 minutes ago. I have nothing to say about that, and I don't think Sean Quinn will in time either.
But I think the real point here is that even if everything you're saying, Barry, turns out to be correct, that still only implies to 2.3 billion euro.
Yeah.
What about the remaining 455 million euro?
Okay, but Pat, if that 2.3 billion euro hadn't gone wrong in the first place, falsely, in my opinion, and I think it's going to come out in court in time, and I stated this 6 months ago, had that not gone wrong in the first place, he would be in a fine position to risk the 400 million, and he would have no problem paying the 400 million.
Well, he hasn't yet.
Because his whole business is taken off him.
But why not then pay the money back before the businesses went into receivership?
Okay, this brings us to another issue, which is the Russian issue, where all the properties are and all the rest of it. You know what's after happening, this highly intelligent government we have now? They've gone to first of all, if they took control of the companies, if they worked with Sean Quinn and kept him in there in some kind of a management capacity or whatever, and worked their way through this, it would have come out the other side. They put Sean Quinn out, they wouldn't answer his calls, but wait a second now, right? In Russia, Sean Quinn, in my opinion, went, and his family went to disperse the assets to try and keep them away from the Irish government. Mind you, anyway, we'll get into that in a minute, right? But the next thing is, he does it in such a way that Russia isn't the easiest place to deal with. You know, it's right.
Well, it's very easy to deal with if you're a corrupt businessman.
It's not. They're way more corrupt over there,
well,
and they don't use the tongue.
Dare I suggest?
That size.
Dare I use the example of the recent French tax exile to Russia, who managed to secure himself a very easy passport.
Sure, yeah.
So you know,
of course,
if you have money, you can grease the wheels in Russia.
Absolutely, but if your back is to the wall and you have money in Russia and you have money in Russia and it gets jammed between the two of you, you know who's going to get it, don't you?
Oh, well, that's the point.
Right, exactly. So the
FDI.
next thing then, what does the Irish government do? They come along and they offer some company in Russia 150 million to get in there to get the money back. Now, I would suggest that I spent a lot of time in Russia. There mightn't be a huge difference between the people that have this money and the people that were paid to go and get it.
All right, so
it's very possible.
Let me see the point, Pat. What do you think of his point that, in fact, chasing down this money that he has squirreled away for his family and friends, that, in fact, we might be costing the Irish government even more money in the long run?
Well, I thought it was an interesting point Barry made, that, you know, by keeping Sean Quinn on side, he may have cooperated. The only difficulty is that there's not the slightest shred of evidence for it. I mean, Sean Quinn has shown himself basically to be a fraud, to be a perjurer.
But one second now, before all this actually broke, as far as I can remember, and as far as I know, Peter Quinn, Jr., the fellow that's in the north that won't come back, Peter Quinn, he was getting absolutely no replies to his phone calls to Anglo. None. They were just cut.
Perhaps they doubted him for some reason.
Well, perhaps, and maybe they had good reason. But it'll all come out in time. But it's still, even that, right, the 450 million, if the 2.3 billion had been sorted, if it could have been sorted, common sense sorted, the 450 million is no issue to a man that has 2.3 billion in his pocket, or less of a debt. Doesn't matter.
Let me ask you this one point, Barry. Regardless of the situation with the IRBC having taken over and nationalised Anglo-Irish Bank, to all effect, having nationalised it, and basically having to chase down what is now our money, for want of a better word, even if that didn't happen and Anglo-Irish went bust, wouldn't they still have to try and come after him for the money that he effectively owed him? Wouldn't we still go through the rigmarole of the high courts, the bankruptcy proceedings?
Would you not think that the obvious thing to do in this situation, where all the accounts were wrong, the regulator missed it, everybody missed it, would you not think the first case to be had was to put Ernst & Young, if they're liable, the regulator, Anglo-Irish, Shawnee Fitz and the boys who cooked all the books, would you not think that you put them first? If you put them first, I'd have no issue. If you put them first and you sort that out, if Sean Quinn is wrong after that, I have absolutely no issue. And he is wrong he is and has been wrong.
But the difficulty is that people are already saying that it's taking too long to get Shawnee Fitz on trial.
You know what the biggest difficulty I have with this? Sean Quinn, Peter Quinn, none of them have been given enough of space in the general media in this country to tell their side of the story properly.
But Barry, why exactly?
Under any platform. Everybody, it's great media coverage for everybody to say, oh, billionaire gone. It's racism. It's absolute racism to go and call. There are people out there, you know, if you talk on the street, you go and ask people, right? People down the street and turn around and say, oh, billionaire, fuck him, he's this, that. Like, you can't do that. There's people, begrudging people in this country just because of his wealth, regardless of how he generated up to that point. It's racism against business people.
Dare I suggest that people might be feeling angry at particular businessmen such as JP McManus, Bono, because they are in fact lecturing everybody else about the way that they should live their life. JP McManus is living like a king up in Limerick, even though he's using Switzerland as a tax exile status. So in effect, these people have benefited repeatedly off of being Irish citizens, but now that it's come to the point where they're wealthy, they're not paying back into the same system that they've benefited from.
Right, and okay, hold on, you're going off on a different tangent altogether, which is fine. Like, I'm not going to get into JP McManus's status because I don't know it. We're talking here about Sean Quinn.
Sure,
So,
but-
so you can't put all billionaires,
No
whether
problem.
it is JP McManus, Quinn or anyone else. I mean, you can't put... I've heard people saying, oh, Sean Quinn, the big property developer. Listen, Sean Quinn's property portfolio was that size of his business. He was a manufacturing man. He was a man that created 7,000 jobs. He wasn't one of these high-fluting fellas that walked into the banks borrowing millions just to build properties. He built companies. He's not the same. And these people don't know that.
So, Pat, what would you say about this sort of sense of begrudgery in Ireland? Would you think that this is all boiling down to
I'm not saying all of it, but there is an element of it.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, I'd just like to get back to what Barry was saying there about how, Sean Quinn created jobs, and he certainly did.
Sure.
But, let's bear in mind, he wasn't doing that out of the kindness of his heart. He was doing that to build up goodwill. He had, he basically had a monopoly, and, understandably so, on the insurance and the cement markets in Cavan. And that wasn't out of any underhand dealings. That was out of loyalty and goodwill. So he created jobs basically to make a profit. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But he wasn't doing it out of some sense of philanthropy.
I'm not saying he was.
So,
I'm not saying he was.
yeah. So, but I think that with some of the coverage that has, come out about him, some of the favourable coverage about him, that point has been emphasised a lot, that he was a job creator. Whereas, I think,
I would say that he was. I would say that he was one of the people. It would be a person that would have been proud of the jobs that he did create. Let it be secondary to him building his companies. But I mean,
We'll just have Pat
But
finish
if
the
we're going to put the emphasis on, the jobs that people create, how many jobs did Anglo create, for heaven's sake, both through the main company and through their subsidiaries and through the loans that they made to numerous developers, not just Sean Quinn at all. The fact is that a lot of his business towards the end was basically built on sand. And if you build on sand, then when the tide comes in, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
But what business of his were built on sand?
Just 1 second, we'll interrupt with a comment there from Sully Brazil. Quinn is a scapegoat, end of, but the real crimes I suppose the real criminals are up in the Dáil and who have sold us out to the banks, Irish and the world. Any comments on that either?
I've never claimed that, this whole thing begins and ends with Sean Quinn. I think we can all agree that, the golden circle did exist. There is, a wider network here that, hopefully will be gotten to the bottom of in the next couple of years.
Dare I suggest to both of you that this might be just the beginning of the sort of opening up of all the sort of corruption, the brown envelopes that really were just brushed over with the arrest and prosecution of Ray Burke in Dublin.
How are you associating Ray Burke brown envelopes with Sean Quinn?
My point is that there's a sort of, that perhaps this might lead to less, I suppose, dare I say, more subtle corruption that's just pervasive throughout Irish society. No, I'm not saying that. Well, look, let me give you another example. We saw in the recent tribunal Bertie Ahern, a Minister for Finance of a European country who didn't have a bank account while he was Minister for Finance. And you're telling me that there's no... So
I'm
there's,
not telling you
no,
anything.
I know, absolutely.
I'm not
But
saying
I think
anything.
that there's definitely more to this than just Quinn. And I think we might find it in the...
How can you associate Quinn with Bertie Ahern not having a bank account as Finance Minister? What has that got to do with it? That's a separate issue. And Albert Reynolds, or not Albert Reynolds, what was the other, Ray Burke and all. Like, how does Sean Quinn come into that?
I think that, Sean Quinn, by agreeing to prop up Anglo's share price, if that is in fact what happened, as part of the Golden Circle, a lot of that was built on cronyism. I mean, let's not forget that Brian Cowan went golfing with Sean Fitzpatrick, which is slightly tangential, but it's just on the morning of the bailout. But that's what I'm saying, that's just an example of the kind of networks, kind of cronyism that, happened and happens in Irish politics. So the fact that Sean Quinn was part of the Anglo network, was part of the Golden Circle, like, I don't know what dealings were going on there. We can only hope that they come out with time. But I'm pretty certain there was some sort of network there, some sort of cronyism going on there. And we can only hope that we're blowing the top off that now at the moment with these proceedings, and that will become clearer.
Can I ask you a question, Pat?
Of course.
Do you accept the fact that Ernst & Young, Ernst & Young, we have to be careful because from a legal point of view, but do you accept that the books were cooked? Ernst & Young, as far as I'm concerned, couldn't spot billions being shifted for 1 week from one year end to the next and back in the following week. That's a separate issue. Either they couldn't spot it or they didn't put it forward. Either way, it puts them in whatever position it puts in. Legally correct, morally, either does. Anyway, we leave it at that, right? But, so within Anglo, the books were cooked big time over year after year after year. And therefore, Sean Quinn was buying shares in something that was completely false. Do you accept that?
That, you see, I know a lot of this stuff is sub judice and hasn't yet
No,
been...
there's nothing subdued. Well, you made
Yes.
Thanks very
Yeah.
much. This man is the barrister with it.
Yeah.
There's nothing dubious in that. The facts are that they are there, that the books were cooked.
It is still in doubt because that's what Sean Quinn's defence to the claim for the 2.8 billion will be.
Yeah.
That hasn't yet been heard. The court hasn't yet decided, whether
Were the
that
books
was in
cooked or
fact
not?
correct.
That has been proved.
Which judgment?
That there was billions shifted. You're not surely questioning that there was billions shifted in and out every year end.
I simply don't know. I don't know the fine detail of it. And like I say, that will be Sean Quinn's defence to the claim. So whether he succeeds or not, we haven't seen yet.
Okay.
But even if that is the case, the question will be, was he aware of that? Should he have been aware of that? Was he, buying these shares basically to help out friends of his, to help prop up Anglo knowingly? Or was he a victim? Was he a dupe?
He was completely a victim. Sure, for God's sake, if Ernst & Young didn't know it and the regulator couldn't see it, how in the name of God is Sean Quinn supposed to see it? He's a businessman running 10 companies. He takes Ernst & Young and he takes the accounts of the Anglo-Irish Bank as being real.
And
If we can't take Ernst & Young's accounts as being real, or the bank's figures as being real, which now we know we can't or we couldn't, sure, well then what are we at?
I was just giving an example of the points that might be made by the plaintiff in the judgment at the hearing of the trial. So again, I'm not entirely comfortable with this line of debate simply because we're speculating on things that have yet to be decided.
I'd suggest, Pat, you're going to get very comfortable with it in time, and it's a pity it's taken so long.
Apart from the wildly speculative idea of what exactly happened during those dark days when we were forced to bail out all those separate banks, what do you think would be the eventual fallout of this case with Sean Quinn? We'll focus on Sean Quinn still for the moment. So what do you think, Barry, just summarizing up?
As far as I'm concerned with Sean Quinn, and I've said this 6 months ago, Sean Quinn is a person that has got his house, his car and everything else taken off him for drunk driving, while there's somebody else who's an absolute murderer got 2 weeks. That's an analogy of where, and I think Sean Quinn has definitely committed a couple of sins without doubt. I'm sure he well regrets them, but they're not to the level of murder. They definitely, you need a rap in the knuckles, a crack in the arse, whatever, but not to the level of what he's suffering. And I think that's going to be proven in time. And Sean Quinn's integrity, and where I hope to God that he ends up back in control of his businesses, even though that's another story. The first part is to prove that this whole thing was wrong in the first place. Okay. And hopefully he'll definitely get some what's the word I'm looking for?
Reparations?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Barry. Do you have any final thoughts on this, Pat?
As I think Barry acknowledged, we're talking about a man who committed fraud, who lied, who perjured. And, this isn't on a par with someone committing murder. Of course, a murderer is sent to jail for life. Sean Quinn spent a fairly comfortable 3 months in prison. He's come out without a criminal record. And I've never claimed that, this whole thing starts and ends with Sean Quinn. There is a lot more that hasn't been found out yet. But Sean Quinn's actions, so far as we're aware at the moment, were basically motivated by greed. And I don't think that it's a fit case for anyone to have any sympathy for him yet.
Okay, that's great. My own thoughts, I'm sure, is that we're going to see plenty more of Sean Quinn in the future, and the results of what might happen will surely spread out into the rest of our society. We'll see who else is responsible in the future days for what exactly happened. I'd like to thank Barry Murphy and Pat J Barrett for the interesting conversation tonight. I've been Alan Noonan, and thank you very much.